democracy. Have faith of a mustard seed. Get up on your feet, rise up.
Welcome to another segment of the Drexel Seymour Show. Today, I am so happy and delighted to have a special guest. Of course, all guests are special, but I consider this guest a very special guest. About a year ago, actually exactly a year ago, the Turks and Caicos Islands government announced the appointment of our very first female governor, Deleeni Selveratnam. I hope I have that name correctly stated. And so today, since it's been a year in office as the governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, I thought it'd be fitting to just have a candid conversation with her to see how things are going, what sort of challenges she's had, some of the achievements she has done, and what we look forward to in the remainder of her term here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And with that said, I want to take this opportunity to welcome Governor Selveratnam to the Drexel Seymour Show.
Thank you so much, Drex. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Awesome. So how's it going for you? I mean, it's been a year, but how's it going for you so far?
Good. It's a lot on. It's a full-on posting. It's not certainly quiet, but it's been good. There's a lot of progress that's been made over the year. And obviously there's been a lot of key challenges in respect of what we're dealing with, but it's been a good year. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Before we go into the progress and the challenges, for those who are watching the show, especially those who are not from the Turks and Caicos Islands, because the role of governor may be different in the U.S.
Yes.
What is your role as the governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands?
So my role, the Turks and Caicos Islands is a British overseas territory. And so my role as a governor, as much as it's a UK appointment, my oath is to serve the interests of the Turks and Caicos Islands. That's the oath that I take when I take up my posting. And it is about working in partnership with the elected government in terms of facilitating the requirements of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Within that, I have very specific constitutional responsibilities, mostly around national security, good governance, international relations. But as part of my role, I chair cabinet and do in that role also have a sort of responsibility across in terms of ensuring the good governance or progression in terms of facilitating the government's agenda.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think many of us, when you say your role is, more or less allegiance to people, to the Turks and Caicos Islands, I think many of us are under the impression that your role is for the British government and not that of the Turks and Caicos Islands. So very interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, a lot of my role in what I'm doing is a lot of advocacy and actually driving home the point and the requirements of what the Turks and Caicos Islands require with the British government. So it very much is an allegiance in respect of serving the interests here. Obviously, you are appointed by the UK government. They have their mandate, but there is a natural tension in respect of the roles that you have to carry out. But those are my duties in respect of the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that clarity. You mentioned in your opening remarks there have been some quite achievements. Do you mind sharing what some of the achievements that have been done over the past year?
Yeah, so when I came in, someone will always say to you, well, what have you done? What have you changed? And I always think you shouldn't come into a role to change things for the sake of it. Really, what I wanted to do when I came in was just really, first of all, I wanted to understand the Turks and Caicos Islands, understand the communities. And that's why it's very important to me to get out. And actually, each community is different, each island's different, and actually their vulnerabilities, requirements, or potential differ. So it's only through understanding that can I effectively be a member of cabinet as well, where propositions are being brought forward and you're sitting there going, well, hold on, that's not going to work. I don't know, in South Caicos, or, because you understand what the community requirements are and the differences across. So that was very important to me. But equally, also just understanding where we are in respect of the challenges across each of the institutions that I'm particularly responsible for. Where does there need to be focus in those vulnerabilities? And where I've really driven a lot of focus and attention has been on the criminal justice side and the national security side, and really driving our defence posture. And some of that people may not see, but it's about, if we don't have the foundation stable, then you can't actually do the big and mature the systems of governance. So to give you an example, I think when I came in, you know, we were in an environment where we were having to do heroic policing because of what had come before us. Whereas now we are certainly driving towards much more intelligence-led policing in respect of maturing the model of intelligence, looking at how we're doing proper mapping across in terms of what we're looking at, and also the capability and the experience that we're bringing in.
Okay, so I mean, hopefully we'll reap some benefits from all these.
I think it is now, and you see the confidence in terms of the ownership of the operations and how they're being taken forward, and also the developments in, as I said, in terms of that intelligence-led policing. But in terms of then really driving that forward, we've now got a good foundation from which we're building. And we have also invested in assets which will also help support that in terms of the tools that are needed for them to take that forward.
Absolutely. No, okay, so that's some of the progress you mentioned. Of course, I know you mentioned some sort of challenges. But I mean, in your role as governor, I mean, what are some of the greatest challenges that you are experiencing?
Here in the Turks and Caicos Islands? Yes,
in Turks and Caicos.
Do you know, one of the ones that I hadn't necessarily appreciated, but really, we don't have the depth of resilience that we need. So I think we field a lot. You have to do every function of a home civil service, and you are dealing with very acute issues. But across each department, we haven't got that depth of resource where you've got a resilience so that you can field to do what's in front of you, do the strategic, but also have the resilience to then drive further progress. It's all the same people, all the same bench. And I think that vulnerability in our resilience does affect our ability to drive the more strategic work and create the space to look at matters more strategically of where we need to be. And that really is a challenge, because I think there is a lot of acute issues day in, day out that you're dealing with, which you can get pulled into. So for me,
that is true.
It's really, how do I create that space, and how do I create the space for the teams to be there? Because otherwise we're constantly going to be in this reactive environment rather than a proactively owning the context of what we're dealing with. And I see that across all sectors, really. I mean, it's more acute in some, but I think just by the nature of the size of our population and where we are, we just don't have that depth of reach, which I think is a significant challenge.
That is true. I mean, the size, and you have the same people playing multiple roles.
Yes, multiple hats.
Yes, so that is a challenge.
But I think, knowing that, I think we deliver brilliantly in terms of what we're dealing, what we're fielding with. Obviously, there is room for improvement. Obviously, there is sort of huge concern in certain areas, and also I acknowledge huge frustration when you're coming to the delivery of public services and actually, you know, efficiency and effectiveness. And that is part of what we need to do in terms of how do we focus resourcing to tackle that, because actually it then creates a space in those efficiencies and effectiveness of what we're doing.
You're right. So I mean, so how do you think you could overcome that? Do we set up different teams and try to give them different projects to carry out? How will you look?
I think the thing is, you've always got to be careful about overload and capacity, and also too much change in one go. So a lot of what the Deputy Governor and I have been looking at are, where are the real acute points of frustration or failure in terms of the delivery of services. So let's tackle those. Are we really clear? And I've been talking about during Civil Service Week that we've had just this week. I think people say, well, what do you mean change? What do you mean transforming? And it's not transforming for the sake of transforming. There is a lot, when you look at systems here, if you're doing that sort of workflow mapping, I will always say, well, why are we doing it that way? And I know a lot of civil servants are saying, I don't know why we've done it that way, but we just do it that way.
Because that's how we manage it.
That's how we're done. And you sit there going, but do you think we could be doing this? Is it producing perverse results? Yes. Could we be doing it more effectively? Yes. How do you think we could be doing this more effectively? And actually empowering that sense of ownership and change. I think that's where we start. Because there is a lot of knowledge, but I think the agency to drive that change is perhaps not there. But I think with very little, you could see significant change, and then you can do the bigger projects. But I think if you're building on top of inefficiency, then it is going to be a house of cards in what you're dealing with.
Yeah. I was at the youth forum.
Oh, yes, that was very good, wasn't it? Very inspiring.
Yes,
very
very
inspiring.
Impressed with the young people.
Yeah.
And some of the suggestions they have. And
Yes.
I think some of the suggestions are not really difficult. It's just some simple stuff. And I think even those little small things
will make a significant difference.
It will.
Yeah. But I think it's how do we give them agency to be able to drive it through?
Yes.
And I think that's the responsibility of leadership.
Yes. Now, a big challenge for us, maybe not in your role, but maybe it is, I don't know, but in our role as residents is the influx of illegal immigrants.
Yeah, that is a challenge for me.
Okay.
It's a shared challenge.
Big
it's
issue
huge.
for us. We don't know what it's like. We don't know what's happening, and I understand, the situation in Haiti.
Yeah.
That as long as Haiti is in the state it's in, it will force their citizens and residents to leave. And of course, we're like the closest place to Haiti. But can you share with the viewers, can you give us some type of hope as to what is being done to address this significant and massive influx of illegals? Yeah,
so a lot of what I have been doing is really driving the trilateral relationship that we have, the Turks and Caicos Islands have, with the Bahamas and the US.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know, you probably do know, we have an OPAT agreement,
yes.
But that's very tightly defined really from a drugs prevention perspective.
Oh, okay.
So we've been doing a lot to widen that approach in terms of joint operations that really recognise actually it's never just drugs. It is also looking at guns, it's human trafficking, and then it is migrant operations as well. So to be honest, through this last year, that has really come on leaps and bounds in terms of the nature of the operations that we are doing, the joint interdictions, but critically, the intelligence sharing of what is going on, early interventions in terms of prevention. We've recently, part of the work that I've been doing is a partnership with the Joint Maritime Security Centre in the UK. And through them, we've got additional radar coverage that is coming in and feeds that really give us a good sense of marine domain awareness, which we're then managing with the US and the Bahamas in terms of that sort of collaborated grip across our waters in respect of that. Part of that success, I don't know if you know, is I was just asking the team where we were. From this time last year, we have reduced the number of migrants interdictions coming down by 60%. So last year,
oh really?
Yeah,
seems like it's more this year.
I know
okay.
it. No, I didn't realise it was that much. Last year it was something like 4,016 and 32 interdictions. In this last year, it's down to 800 and something with I think 10 interdictions. So it's pretty significant. I mean, that doesn't account for obviously the landings that we've had, how that then is being managed, and that's something that we're certainly looking at. But we're looking at also where are we in developing more of a Coast Guard posture in terms of our resilience with our marine branch, and how do we develop that? But I have to say that we have sort of come on leaps and bounds with that trilateral relationship with the US and the Bahamas. Right. And then I understand today the first of the 200 officers of the Kenyan multi-security group that were going into Haiti arrived in the national force that came in. So I think that's the start of that. In respect of that peacekeeping
from Kenya.
From Kenya, the Kenyan,
Okay. Now I noticed you mentioned the UK, the US, the Bahamas,
yes,
and Turks and Caicos.
Yes.
So what about
the UK
conversations with Haiti itself?
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any conversations with?
I haven't personally directly been having conversations with Haiti. However, I I am working with the UK government, and there are various discussions that are then going on, and certainly through the UN force that have been going in. I know the UK have certainly been advocating on behalf of the TCI in respect of that. So those conversations have been going on with Haiti in that respect.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people too are wondering, like, when the sloops or the boats, whatever they are intercepted.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to viewers why they have to come to the detention center to be processed? Why can't we just turn around and take them right back to Haiti? Do you understand?
Yeah, tug the boat across.
Yeah. Why do we have to come back here?
It just wouldn't be safe. So I mean, it's not safe in of itself. So what you have is, I'm sure many of your viewers have seen the nature of the sloops and the photos of the boats. So you have quite a lot of people on those sloops. And when they're coming in, there's more stability because they're sort of crouched down. As it's interdicted, they will stand up, which then also creates an inherent safety issue. So it's preservation of life in respect of our ability. So the safest way and the most efficient way is to bring them here, process them, and then send them back.
Oh, I see.
And then it's also about managing the safety of our officers and marine units in terms of the time it would then also take in that precarious position where they are outnumbered by the people who may be on that boat as well. So it's very much from a preservation of life, safety and security perspective that we have to follow those procedures.
I understand. Okay, I never thought about the safety element.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about transporting them by a big boat as opposed to a plane? Is that a safety issue too?
Well, we don't have the vessels in terms of those numbers, but it would be, we do the Bahamas because they have the big naval vessels. So we have done it with the Bahamas where they've been on the naval vessels and taken, I think they've done done one repatriation in that way. Oh. But again, it is a safety issue in terms of the numbers involved, the health and safety of them as well as our crews and how that then needs to be managed.
Okay. Well, we'll continue to see what's happening.
It's not easy. But I think the issue for us is we are on the front line of Haiti's demise.
Yeah, we are.
But what the work that certainly the Premier and I have been focusing on is really making sure that we're not then the soft underbelly compared to where the Bahamas are and the US are in strengthening their borders from an attraction perspective and pull factor of coming here. So it really has been a lot of effort to strengthen our defence posture in that respect and have that border security.
I remember one time the Bahamas had discontinued flights between Haiti and the Bahamas. I'm not I don't remember why they did it, but I know at one point that...
they did?
Yeah, at one point they did for a short period of time, Now, of course, we talk about illegals. Now, of course, we have crime.
Yes.
Now, I know you give us a rate of 60%.
In terms of interdictions that have come down, yeah.
Now, I don't know about crime. I think we're probably about 18 murders for the year, I believe, so far.
Yeah,
I don't remember the count.
So.
Around 18, 19. That's a big issue for us, and I know that national security is under your portfolio. Yes. Of course, under the government as well, because they do the funding.
Yeah.
And I know that the crime is more than just the police. I think it's to a certain extent, it's all of us involved. What do you think needs to be done, or what more needs to be done to help alleviate this crime that is taking place? Do you think we're doing enough? What more? What we need to do?
It's really tough. It's really tough because I think the nature of what we're seeing is unprecedented, and particularly for the nature of our islands and how it's operating, what our population is. There's no one solution to it. I think that's the difficulty of it. So I think from a policing standpoint, and I would say, I think from where the police were to where they are now, there really has been a step change. There's more to go in respect of that. But the model of policing that we've invested in over the years was not to deal with this type of criminality or these levels of criminality. So you've got a police force that very quickly had to move into heroic policing, really, to be able to deal with it without then that resilience to then, get out there, because we've got to do it on all fronts of. You've got the migrant activity that needs to be dealt with in the joint operations. You've then got the tactical operations with the sort of criminality aspects and the gangs. You've then got the community policing that we need to have, in addition to all the other aspects of policing. So it's also then a very small number of police force that you're then dealing with to do that spread of activity in different directions. So that's where we're really trying to build their resilience and resource them appropriately. But what I would say is, I think moving to a more intelligence-led policing model, which is what we're heavily investing in, is one part of it. I think we've got to do a lot around the prevent agenda.
Yes.
As well.
That's the key.
That is key. And I think, I've said it before, children our youth want purpose, right? They want purpose, they want position. And an element of quick cash as well. So how are we creating pathways to responsible citizenship, but also in a manner that's accessible to them, or that gives them the confidence to either know what their options are, how to navigate those options, or even to go for those options, or to have that belief of what they're dealing with. But I think there's a lot around prevent. I think there's also a lot around safeguarding that we need to deal with. I think there's an environment, particularly for young girls, that they're growing up in, that for me raises significant issues from a safeguarding perspective. And I think you're then conditioning very young people. So actually their ability to then be responsible citizens with that either level of trauma, or in an environment where most things seem permissive, or the boundaries of right or wrong or citizenship aren't clear, then we're just adding to that stockpile on slippery slope into further criminality. So there is a real focus. I think the Minister of Education really has been quite tenacious on her efforts in this front. But I think that's where and I know it's difficult for the community, because there is a lot of, there's two aspects of it. Everyone's just dealing with their day-to-day, right? And people have multiple jobs, they've got multiple aspects, they're being pulled in different directions. So it's difficult to then have that community environment where the community is a driving force behind it. There's obviously stigma. So it's how are we self-perpetuating a sense of stigma and isolation? And if we're isolating people, if they are seeing inequity, then that probably is going to result in resentment. And therefore it's not necessarily going to result in productive members of our community. And then the other part of it is there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge amongst our communities about what might be going on, who's involved in various issues, but the trust and confidence to come forward with that information is hard, because I think they'll be worrying about their own safety. So
not cutting you short, but not being worried about their own safety. A lot of people in the community they don't trust the police.
No, they
feel that if they report the incidents, they have the knowledge, they tell the police, they feel that as soon as they report the incident, the police will call the relevant person. And
I've been told
and so
that.
That's a big issue.
It is. I mean, it's something that I spoke to the Commissioner of Police about when he was coming in respect of trust and confidence in the police, and that actually there is a considerable rehabilitation that we have to do in the minds of the community, but also the police themselves, and just down to how do they conduct themselves on a day-to-day basis, what is the responsiveness, and actually if information is given, how is it then treated? Because if there's no, as I say, if there's no trust around that, then we can't begin to start tackling these issues, because we do need the community. But I think, I can quite understand the community will say to me, well, you always then put it back on the community, and it's not about the community, it's about the police, and it's about, and it's a fair point. It really is a fair point. But if we are to move to that sort of intelligence-led policing, to do the prevention and to really be able to intercept and get ahead of it, then we do need the information that's there, because actually then it leaves little room for people to hide.
Yeah. I mean, it also seems that we have well, based on from where I sit, it's like we have a difficult time when cases are come to the judicial system or go to court. We're unable to resolve those cases. I mean, has there been any discussion about a mandatory fingerprinting? I know twice, I think this came up. There were some people in the community who were against it, and somehow it didn't go any further. Has there been any discussion about fingerprinting?
There has, so two aspects to it. In terms of migrant landings and coming in, we do fingerprinting, and we do fingerprinting, but at the moment it's a very manual process. But we're trying, and this is part of our relationship in terms of the trilateral, looking at more biometrics so that it can go automatically in a database and we can profile who's coming. So that's part of the work that we're trying to work towards, and that's a good plank of what Border Force are taking forward in terms of our border security arrangements. So it's in terms of that, it's not just about creating immigration and customs together. It is, what are the foundations of a border force? How are we then effectively knowing who's coming in and out at any one time? How is that then being managed from a sort of management of identity perspective? But obviously there's sort of considerable legal issues and frameworks that need to be managed and around that, but that is being worked on.
Okay.
But from a policing standpoint, I think they do fingerprinting when people are arrested and charged. But again, I think it's about, how is that information kept? Are we using modern systems that enable that database to be there so that it can then be taken forward? But the offender management side is being looked at. And then even from a probation side, we've made great strides with Jaron Harvey, who's leading up the probation and social services to really drive our offender management strategy.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sounds like a lot of progress in that.
It's progress. I think
field.
the difficulty is it takes time to get it in place.
Yeah.
So I can completely understand from a public confidence perspective, they're not seeing tangible outcomes yet.
Right.
But from my perspective, it's important that we invest in those foundational planks in order to be able to drive those outcomes.
Okay, I want to ask you this question. I mean, we've had, you recently appointed the Commissioner of Police.
Yes.
We've had quite a number of commissioned police. And the recent appointment, the community was not happy with that appointment. They were very concerned that, I say you because I understand.
Yeah, no, it's my appointment.
Right, that you appointed someone who is more or less retired. Or, I mean, and rather than, and there was even concern that, why do we have to bring in an outsider? Why can't we find a local person to head the police department? What do you say about those comments?
I can understand them. I definitely can understand them. I mean, one, in terms of someone who's retired, he's in his mid-50s.
He's in his 50s?
Yeah, he's in his 50s.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So he's
You're
not.
retired,
I think there are members of the executive who may be older. I'd have to check that, but there might be members of the executive who are older than him. But so he's in his 50s.
Okay.
But look, we have a significant crime problem here, and I need to preserve life. So that is what I'm led by. And so the commissioner brought with him a wealth of experience in respect of dealing with this type of crime. That is his background. And not only from his time in Grenada, but also regionally, he is very well respected in respect of the nature of this sort of organised crime that we're dealing with, transnational crime, and has also done a significant round work with sort of Caribbean regional groups, and has a very good reputation both with them and others. So when you've got someone who's got that depth of experience to bring to bear in what we're dealing with, it's not about a question of local or not local. It's about who is the best equipped to deal with the challenge in front of us, given that the stakes are so high in that this is about life.
Okay.
And I'm not going to take a chance on that.
Okay. All right. I understand your perspective on that.
But I mean, what I would say is it's also about making sure that we're developing the talent. And I know this is always said there's an outside appointment and they'll say, oh, but for me, I think it's also about how do we get, and I previously said, we've had a model of policing over the last 30 years, which was to a very different crime model.
Yes.
To create our future leaders, yes, they're getting a depth of experience here, but what I've talked to the Commissioner about, but also my other governors as well, is because they have the same issue. How do we get them to have a wider depth of experience to then bring to bear, and that sort of sense of you've got to go out to go up? And could we do more in terms of secondments to different and swaps with different, particularly the Caribbean overseas territories, so that they're in different environments dealing with different forms of leadership, different types of crime, to then come back with that experience to bear. So I think we've got to be more intentional in developing that pipeline, identifying our future leaders, developing that sort of program of experience so that they are able to compete effectively for these positions.
Yeah, I think the secondment is a very good idea. I not only in the police department,
but I think across. I think the Deputy Governor and I have certainly talked about, because I was saying to her when I first came in last year, I said, okay, who is your next generation of perm sex and leaders? How are we identifying them, and how are we then going to drive that talent program? And actually, let's look at what those opportunities might be. But in that way, being part of the British Overseas Territories is a good thing, because actually that's a very easy secondment swap opportunity to be able to get in terms of a cadre of expertise. So that's certainly something that the Deputy Governor and I are looking at, but very much so also on the policing side. Right.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your role as the chair of the cabinet.
Sure.
Tell us, how does that work? On the outside, based on my understanding, is that everybody has to agree, and there must be a consensus. And consensus means everybody agree.
No, it's a consensus. It doesn't mean every single person has to agree.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So cabinet works. Well, it's a modern partnership. Right. So in cabinet, I am very conscious that I am sitting with democratically elected leaders driving a government agenda. And so my role in cabinet with the Premier, and it's very consultative in that respect, is to set the agenda for cabinet in respect of the papers.
So you co-chair?
I chair.
Oh, you chair.
I chair, but I think it's also about a respect for the Premier and his role in respect of the delivery of business, right? So there will be an agenda that's brought forward. We will go through the papers. It might be that papers, if there's further work needed, or that things are missing in terms of issues that have not been looked at, or we need further legal advice, it might be that we might defer it to get what's needed in it, or the Premier will discuss it and say, okay, let's consider it in principle to just get a steer, and then we'll take it forward. So it's very much, it's a collaborative effort. Within that, there will be very diverse viewpoints on issues, and everyone is heard in that respect. If I have concerns, mostly if it's from a governance perspective, or the AG will certainly come forward in terms of legal issues, legal implications. The DG herself also, particularly from a finance or governance side of it, and ultimately it is also about making decisions on risk. Right. But my role is very much making sure that, is everything understood? Are the full implications of this understood? Yes, we could take this initiative forward in this way, but these are the risks of doing it in this way. Actually, if this is the outcome, though, that we want to achieve, is there another way that we could go about it that could mitigate that risk? But the main thing is making sure that ultimately in cabinet, all of that is understood as the decision is being made.
Okay. So you mentioned consensus.
Yeah.
So consensus means that what?
Consensus means that there is a majority view in respect of it, and all issues have been put forward and discussed through. So if there are concerns, all of that will be discussed through and work through with each other, but then a decision will be made as to which way to go with whatever the recommendations are that are put forward.
Because my understanding from consensus is that, say there's like the 8 ministers?
Yeah.
8 ministers and the governor.
Yeah.
And say like...
and then the AG and the deputy governor.
Right, but do they vote, the AG? Oh, there's no voting, I know.
We don't literally say, do you say yes,
Right.
do you say no? What we'll say is everyone in agreement? Are there issues? People might then say, well, no, I don't agree with this. We'll talk through what those issues are, and then we'll decide.
Okay.
Is it
so
going
5
forward?
people agree.
5 people agree, yeah.
Then can it move forward?
It will be discussed, because the thing is, I mean,
okay.
you won't. I mean, it would never be in a position where one person can hold a decision hostage. That's not effective. But what you do need to do is, if people have a concern, we need to understand what that concern is. It might then mean that the way forward isn't strictly how it's suggested in the paper, but actually that concern is recognised and accommodated, or it's talked through and gone, actually, I'm no longer concerned.
Okay, so it has to be addressed, and once you
addressed, or it might be that we'll say, these are the things that you are making. Are you acknowledging and owning the risk?
Okay.
In respect of these issues, and is that fully understood?
Okay.
If we were to. So it's much more, that's where it's about consensus, because it's about discussing all those issues through. It's not just about, well, here it is, do you agree or disagree? And that's the nature of cabinet discussions.
Got it. All right. Okay, thanks for that clarity. Now, the civil servants, they report to the deputy governor, who in turn report to you.
Yes.
Now, a lot of you, can you explain to the people, because a lot of people sometimes, they blame the politicians.
Yes.
And I see even people campaigning now, talking about creation of jobs and all that stuff. And I know that they could put the jobs and stuff in the budget. They create jobs by saying these are the positions we want.
Who's the politicians or the...
Politicians, right?
Okay.
Right, they put, right. But when it comes to the hiring, it's not the politician, right?
Civil servant jobs.
Right, civil servant jobs.
I wouldn't say that's strictly true in terms of a process. No. So what I would say is, look, we have there is a strict workforce ratios that we need to maintain in terms of budget and headcount across the whole of the civil service. So it's not as if...
you mean a percentage of the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have workforce ratios. So it's not as if unlimited jobs can be created, right? And then any jobs that are created are clearly go through a process in terms of, it probably might start with the permanent secretary and the minister in their areas, looking at what their requirements are, where there is, so for example, with the creation of Border Force, there was a need to also then create the Director General post of Border Force if it was to have that sort of dedicated leadership. So that's how a process of those job. So it's not just...
We're going to create these jobs.
No.
Okay, but then how does the actual process work? So when we actually hire you?
So then the job will be advertised, and then so the ministers are not involved in public sector appointments.
They're not.
They're not. What they might advise on is they might opine in respect of the nature of the roles that are required, and agree that, obviously, because they need to agree to the funding in respect of the roles being created. But then it's very much down to the permanent secretary of whichever department taking forward the recruitment process to get that person in.
And then they have a public service commission?
And it goes to the Public Service Commission. The slight difference to that is roles that I'm appointing, where I might, depending on what the roles are, I either have a requirement to consult with the Premier and sometimes certain posts with the Leader of the Opposition, or as a courtesy, I might just inform the Premier in terms of who I'm thinking of appointing and the process I've gone through, because I think that's just a courteous thing to do.
And those roles, basically, you're basically responsible for the police, Commissioner of Police.
Commissioner of Police, Director of Public Prosecutions. What else am I responsible for?
Is it the PS of Finance as well?
PS of Finance, but that would be with the Deputy Governor. What else?
And the Deputy Governor.
Deputy Governor, of course. And then various board appointments. So I've just reinvigorated the Financial Services Commission board with appointments there. So there, and then obviously the Boundaries Commission that came in, and then what else? Integrity Commission. So there are various board appointments as well, which is what I talked to you about. The sort of some of them are in consultation, some of them are not.
Right. Now, speaking about Financial Services Commission board,
of course.
it seems to me as we have a difficult time finding locals, when I say locals, not necessarily Turks and Caicos Islands,
Yes.
people that reside here.
Yeah.
Because the past couple of boards, it's like there's only one or two persons from Turks and Caicos on that board. Why is that like that?
I don't know, and I really wanted to reinvigorate the board. I think because there is such potential there, and so I was really board appointments were coming up, but I really wanted a keen focus in respect of a real sort of tenacious drive on the board and actually taking the Financial Service Commission forward. So I advertised for the posts.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so I did an expressions of interest, and it was interesting. I mean, we had more interest from overseas than we did from the Turks and Caicos Islands. We had some from TCI. I think some of them they couldn't. The difficulty is they couldn't be considered because of conflicts in terms of. The difficulty is you want people competent in the field of financial services. Yeah. But also they cannot be
because they also
in an environment where they could be regulated. So for me, that limits the pool.
It does
in a sense. But I was quite proactive with the office in really trying to reach out. And I said, well, come on, there must be Turks and Caicos Islands people who've gone to London or elsewhere, so have a vested interest here, but have financial services, but they're not in this sector here.
Right.
So through that, we were able to get some good appointments. As well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll announce that soon.
I think I've announced them already. So I had 3 that were announced. So the 3 that were announced were Jeff Scott, who is from currently this chair, I think, of the Bermuda's Bankers Association. Then Dennis Swan, who'd previously been at the FSE, and then DiMaggio Rigby, who's in IT tech, but at Financial Institute in London, and sort of coming back. So really good experience there.
All right, that's good. So what keeps you up at night, Governor?
Crime.
Crime?
Crime keeps me up at night, just because I think the difficulty is it's just the proximity of it.
Yeah.
The proximity of it. And if you look at particularly at Saturday's murder, where it was on the steps of the community centre, and for me, really, the safeguarding, I'm really worried about, given this proximity, I think it's really difficult, I think, for our youth. They will think they're making savvy choices for themselves. And I know it's very attractive to talk about thug life and, get caught up in an environment where I don't think they see it as gang activity. Yeah. Or that they're on but they are on the fringes of it without necessarily realising it. And then it will be so devastating in terms of such talent, such potential. Yeah. So that, for me, it really does keep me up at night because there's no quick fix to it.
No.
But that is our future in terms of that's what we need to harness in terms of amazing talent. And you were at the Youth Forum. I think the previous Saturday I'd been at the Ripple Effect movie, and that there is amazing talent that we have, and it's how do we create opportunities to harness that talent here, and also get their confidence and drive their ambition. So that's what keeps me up at night, because I feel there is a weight of responsibility in terms of tackling that. So it's just how do we go about that, and how do we be intentional in respect of those interventions? Yeah,
that keeps a lot of us up. You just don't know. You may not be a target. You might just be in the area, and something may happen. It's just a concern. There's a lot of our young men being killed, and a lot of our young men being murdered. And it's like we're losing a generation.
Exactly. I think that's the point. We are losing a generation, and we've got to be able to put in some interventions to help prevent that. But it's tough. It's really tough. And I think if they feel they're in this permissive environment without realizing where those boundaries are taking them, then I think it's really difficult. So that really does keep me up at night.
We're almost over with the interview, but I just want to ask
That's
you
all right.
about the British, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, because of course it's a collaborative effort,
Yes.
but a lot of people believe that the British government can do more by even having, for example, the illegal immigrants, by even having some ships to deter people from coming, by helping us out with the crime. I think you guys are invested in some assets you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But a lot of us believe that more can be done in terms of the visibility of something from the UK, especially when it comes to tackling the illegal sloops that are coming here.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. So a lot of what I've been doing is really trying to work with the UK to get that operational response. And very much, certainly the Premier and I in our representations, we don't need funding for kit. We need operational boots on the ground and that resilience that I'm talking about. And so I think we're way beyond where, pointing to, well, we've funded whatever kit for the police, or we've got that. We're beyond that.
Yeah, we could fund it ourselves.
That's not the issue.
Right.
Much more substantively, it is about boots on the ground. It is about operational response and resilience. And also, it's also about our relationships with our partners internationally here, because we've also got to be able to hold our own as part of this collaborative effort. But we, with what we've got, cannot do that unless the UK recognise their responsibilities in respect of that. So that, it has been good to be able to get 3 UK ministerial visits out here, and really
during your year here.
During my year here, I think the thing is, because I think otherwise it's always looked as a sort of not quite theoretical, but I was really keen that they saw in situ,
like how you visited different islands.
Yes, it's just you've got to understand the context, and I think from that ministerially they got it, and they were really taken aback, I think, in terms of really respected actually how we were responding, that we were dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. But also could see we were at the limits in respect of what we were doing. But it's then the follow through of then that tangible response that we need to drive home with them. So that is part of the efforts in respect of what we're doing with the UK to actually get that operational response to support us and build that resilience.
Okay. I also want to talk about the illegal housing.
Yes.
I know that the government has, created
the ISU,
Informal Settlement Unit.
Yes.
But it seems like, and I know I had Mr. Carlos on the show at least twice.
Oh, you have? Okay.
I did. Yes. But it seems like it's moving so slowly. Do you know any updates or what's happening? Are we seeing any evidence of some of these illegal illegal homes being demolished?
There has been some effort. I think the thing is, it's multi-layered in what you're dealing with, because when you go into Dockyard, it's and I've been I've been a number of times into the Dockyard. It is a community.
Yeah, I've never been there.
You've not been?
No.
Oh, you can come with me next time.
I may take you up on that. Yes.
No, do. I think, to be honest, I think they are communities. And so I think there is a sort of potential sort of sense of what it is and what it isn't, right? But in there, as much as you're dealing with, they're sort of illegal migrants, you've also got everyday workers living there. You've got a lot of hotel workers living there. You've got people who've got, because that's, from a housing perspective, that's the only place they can afford. And you've got sort of regular housing intermixed with irregular housing. There's a whole load of health and safety issues. There's just lots of different issues that need to be dealt with. So we can't, what the team have been doing is they've basically been profiling it and working out who is where and what are the housing, are there young children in there? Because also what we've got to deal with is a displacement. Because if you don't understand what you're displacing, what the channels are to then deal with that, then you're just creating the problem elsewhere. So it's not something that can move very quickly.
Not overnight.
Not overnight. But that said, we've now got a group from Trinidad who are specialists in this field. I forget what they're called. I met with them this week or last week. So it's a whole team who are urban planning, quality surveyors, legal, all sorts of
and they'll be part of the ISU.
So they are working with the ISU and the National Security Secretariat to basically build the action plan of action to take it forward, because you'll need to come at it from all these different, and then again, there'll be safeguarding issues and other issues, but it's critical that we deal with it from a displacement perspective, not just a demolish.
I understand that part, but my only concern
is... It's frustrating though, I know. It is, yeah.
The thing is, I don't want it to grow.
No, I know.
Because if we don't do any... Because, okay, we have what it is now. But if we don't seem to be seen as doing something, then more homes will be being built. So we can prevent new informal settlements. I think that in itself will help.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the focus, but I think it has to be approached with such care and consideration, and also there are the legalities in respect of the management of that move. But that is, and this firm that have come in to support that work is part of the efforts to build that strength of team that can then take that forward. So there is more to come on that, certainly, and it is being great.
That's good.
Yeah.
And my final question, there's rumors that you're not processing any BOTC.
Yes. That's not true.
Oh, you heard the rumor?
Yes, I've heard the rumor. There's a rumor that I'm not processing BOTC or nationality files at all.
Right.
So I can categorically say that is not the case. There is a backlog of cases. I have met with the Minister, the Permanent Secretary and the Deputy Permanent Secretary. There is a backlog of cases within the team. They are processing them through. So the Permanent Secretary and Deputy Permanent Secretary are working through. So as soon as the case files are received, in respect of my office, I am going through them and I'm signing them off. But there has been a backlog, but that is being tackled.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I know it's very easy to just say it's the governor. So I will take it. But what I would say is I have looked into what the actual issue is, and that is being gripped and tackled.
Okay, well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you very much for being on the
No, thank you. It's been really good to spend time talking things through with you. I can't believe it's been a year already. It's gone really, really quickly.
Right?
Yeah, there's been a lot, but really good. And it's been, I mean, the main thing is the thing that's really brought joy is getting out and seeing all the different communities and getting across the island. So it's been a good year from that respect.
Thank you. You have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Drex.
Well, thank you, and enjoy the start of your second year.
Thank you very much.
Turks and Caicos, and I wish you the best.
I look forward to coming back.
Of course, definitely.
Great.
We'll
Okay.
All right.
For sure. Thank you. Bye.
You've been watching the Drexel Seamless Show. Thank you.